there are different models of MacBook. Basically, they fall into three different categories. We have the MacBook Neo, which I looked at 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that is Apple's budget MacBook. It starts in Australia at $900, and that gives you 256 gigabytes of internal storage. It runs on the Apple A18 silicon. It also has one higher tier, which gives you 512 gigabytes of storage, and that comes in at 1,100 Australian dollars. Very good device, very good value for money as far as MacBooks go, at least, and I think it's even giving some of the Windows producers a bit of competition. The only downside for me, I used it for a couple of weeks, was that the keyboard is not backlit. Now, for a lot of people, that won't matter, particularly if they're using it in the daytime when it's perfectly bright enough, or if they're able to touch type, they don't need to look at the keyboard. However, I am not a touch typist and I do need to look at the keyboard. I'm a hunt and peck typist. So I use it in the evening sometimes, and sometimes we have the lights dimmed because my wife might be watching TV or something. I found it very difficult to look at the Neo keyboard. Even when you tip it over, it didn't quite illuminate it enough. So I returned it and I bought a MacBook Air. Now, the MacBook Air is Apple's mid-range device. They start, the new one with the M5 CPU inside it, they start at $1,800. In the end, I bought one of those, although I did spec up the internal storage to 1 terabyte, so mine cost $2,100. That has a very nice 13.6-inch screen, a touch above the Neo one, but only a touch above. The Neo is perfectly good. The M5 CPU is very impressive. I've been able to run some of my Final Cut Pro editing software on there without any issues. It's not quite as fast at rendering as my MacBook Pro. Talking of the MacBook Pro, that's what I'm looking at today. This is my 14-inch MacBook Pro. Now this one is a refurbished model. It has an M4 Pro CPU inside it with a 14-core CPU and a 20-core GPU. It has 2 terabytes of internal SSD storage, and it also has 48 gigabytes of unified memory. The main reason for buying this was I had been using Windows laptops and I'd been dissatisfied with the way it renders. It took a long time to render a video. And when you were using some of the sort of more modern AI online software, things like Descript and even Canva, I found it struggled a bit at times. I've had no such issues since I got the MacBook. I bought this a few months ago now, 2 or 3 months ago anyway. The weight. This is a bigger device and a heavier device than my Air. So this is a 14.2-inch screen and it weighs 1.6 kilograms instead of 1.23 kilograms, which is what the Neo and the Air weigh. But it's not unwieldy. If I'm going away for a weekend, I'm going to take the Air because it is just that little bit slimmer, that little bit lighter. Talking about size, this device is 31.26 centimeters across, which is about 12.3 inches. Depth-wise, or height if you're looking at it this way, it is 22.12 centimeters, which is 8.71 inches. And in thickness terms, we're looking at 1.55 centimeters, which is 0.61 inches. So compared to my Air, it is a bit bigger, a little bit heavier. The screen is beautiful. It's a 14.2-inch liquid retina display, and that has a resolution of 3024 by 1964 pixels. It has 1000 nits of standard brightness, and it has a peak brightness of 1600 nits. So it is a brighter display than either of the other 2 MacBooks. Then you would expect it at the cost, because this device costs 4,159 Australian dollars, the refurbished model. If I had bought it as a brand new model, it would have cost even more, $5,129. So I saved myself around about $600 by buying a refurbished one. The question has to be then, what are you giving away by taking a refurbished model as opposed to buying a brand new one? Well, as it turns out, Nothing, well, not that I could notice. I think sometimes people buy these. Apple have a very generous 14-day return policy. You can return it, questions unanswered, or no question return policy. And I think some people try it, decide it's not for them, and they return it. Apple then repackages it, puts it in a brand new box, they test it, make sure everything's fine, reset it, and sell it. So effectively, I got what was a brand new machine for $600 less than normal. And I'm very, very pleased that I did. So the camera inside this is exactly the same as the MacBook Air that I looked at previously. It is a center stage camera in the middle of the notch at the top of the screen here. The audio on this is a little bit better than my MacBook Air. My MacBook Air has 4 speakers. The Neo has 2, as you'd expect. The MacBook Pro has 6 speakers, and they have force cancelling woofers. Basically what it means is the sound quality is a bit better with this than it would with either of the others. It has a 3 microphone array, and that gives you, according to Apple, studio quality recording. It uses directional beamforming, so basically it doesn't matter where you're stood, and if you're moving around, it keeps focusing on your voice, and it should record nicely. It has a strong aluminium unibody design. This one's space black. It's also available in silver. Looking at the ports around the device, we have 2 Thunderbolt 5 ports on the left-hand side. We have a 3rd Thunderbolt 5 port on the right-hand side. Also on the left-hand side, we have the MagSafe port at the top, and we have a 3.5mm headphone jack. On the right-hand side, we have an HDMI 2.1 port, and just underneath or alongside, we have an SDXC card slot. So you can plug your memory cards in to here. Performance-wise, I haven't done any tests on this, but I've looked at the Geekbench scores, and the Geekbench 6 scores say that in single core processing terms, this scores 3,950, so just under 4,000. And in multi-core, it scores 22,000. For comparison, my MacBook Air M5 scores 4,190 in single core, so slightly faster in single core. And in multi-core, it scores 17,073, so a little bit slower on the multi-core side, which really is what I'm about, because it's being able to render video files. That's where you need that multi-core score, and that's where you need the GPU power. This has got more GPU processors. And the other major difference is that memory, 48GB of fast unified memory. That makes a big difference. Just for comparison, the standard M4, so not with the M4 Pro processor, that scored 3,800 on single core and 15,000 on multi-core. So a bit slower than the M4 Pro that I've got in here. The base model M1 Pro, when it was first launched in the MacBook Pro, that scored 2,380 in single core, and it scored 12,400 in multi-core. So this one is probably around about 70 or 80% faster than the original M1. But what makes the difference in this particular laptop, as much as it is the CPU and the GPU cores, it's that 48GB of unified RAM. The way the Apple software works is when you're using a piece of software that needs more RAM, the GPU can grab more RAM when it needs it. Whereas in a standard Windows laptop, I had one with an NVIDIA chip, a very nice laptop, powerful NVIDIA chip, but the RAM for that was limited. You had 8GB of RAM in the GPU. And then you had your standard, in my one I had 64GB of main system RAM. But the GPU can never use more than that 8GB. Whereas in the MacBook, it could use up to almost all of that 48GB if it needed to. And it manages it sensibly. So for processing videos, doing editing of large Photoshop files, that kind of thing, Apple seems to have got everything right. The balance works. So I guess the question is, given I've now looked at all 3 of these laptops closely together, which one is for whom? So if you just need a basic machine to browse the web, maybe read your emails, store a few photos, do a bit of mild photo editing. You can do a little bit of processing and stuff like that. It's absolutely fine. The MacBook Neo at the price is very good value and a good choice, provided you can get over that lack of a backlit keyboard, which I couldn't. The MacBook Air, that's probably the device most people should buy. It's actually almost powerful enough to do the video editing I want. Certainly for a weekend, I'm going to take that. That's going to go in my backpack rather than the Pro, just because it's lighter weight and slightly more compact. So it can do video editing. It won't render quite as fast as my MacBook Pro, but for occasional use for that kind of thing, fine. For everything else, so browsing the web, writing documents, databases, anything like that, the MacBook Air will breeze through them, particularly with the new M5 CPU. That is a powerful piece of silicon inside that device. But if you need something right at the top edge, because you're doing a lot of video editing and time is important to you, then the MacBook Pro. Price has to come into it, of course. You're looking at $4,500. The MacBook Air is less than half that price. The one I've got, which is an up-spec one, $2,100, or $1,800 for the base model. And if price is really important, of course, the Neo, $900, a comparative bargain. You could buy 5 of those Neos for one of these. But if you're after the most powerful device you can get, that's going to last you a long time, many, many years to come, then you won't go wrong with the MacBook Pro, provided you can afford it. Thank you for watching.